So we've heard from the two main parties involved in financial inclusion, the citizens and the suppliers of banking services. This brings us now to the authorities, which can, if they want to, regulate them. And we've noted more or less with agreement that if we leave things up to the market, we can wait forever, because some of these clients have needs that don't need or meet the needs of competition in the market. They're not a profitable section of the population, so non-mainstream banks, cooperative banks, and others that follow a different logic can reach these consumers to some extent, but only to some extent, even in countries where they're part of the mainstream. They're not enough when it comes to providing appropriate access to all. So there needs to be an incentive so as to ensure that these services are truly accessible. Regulated, of course, but regulation of the kind we have in France is not enough because it doesn't work well. So we need to regulate, but regulate well. And this brings me to Mr. Klute, who is a European Member of Parliament and is rapporteur on the question of access to basic banking services in the European Parliament. And I would have a fairly simple question to put to him. What are we to do? Are we to regulate?
Ja, das ist eine gute Frage.
Yes, well, that's a good question. Well, maybe I could just wait a few seconds for you to put your headphones on. Is that okay? Everyone has the headphones? Good. Well, so what to do in Europe? I think that the response is quite simple. For years now, the Commission has been looking at these issues, and there have been various surveys carried out. And there has been an attempt 2 years ago to propose legislation, a directive or a regulation that was left open. And originally, at the beginning of 2011, or in the autumn of 2010, this was supposed to have been submitted, proposed, and it was constantly postponed. And in 2011, the Commission put forward a communication instead of a directive or a regulation. So this is just a recommendation to the member states that the Commission proposed. So not legislation. And the member states have taken measures, and Commissioner Barnier, who's responsible for the internal market, he still feels that legislation is necessary. So I'm in close contact with him because I agree with him. I think the majority of MEPs would agree with Mr. Barnier. But within the whole college of commissioners, the whole group of commissioners, there was a different position that was arrived at last year. But we hope that we can change this. So within Econ, by the way, is the Committee for Economic and Financial Matters in the European Parliament. So in the Econ, this U-turn of the Commission has been sharply criticized. We sent a letter to Mr. Barnier, where we criticized this, and I'm the coordinator for my political group within the Econ, but we unanimously decided that we should submit a report dealing with this whole issue of legislation, and there's supposed to be a vote on this next week. And we've tried to arrive at a compromise with the shadow rapporteurs on this as well. Now, just to give you the broad outlines, basically, we have covered what my colleague Miss Fili, said. We do need to negotiate with the other political groups, of course. We'll have to see what is likely to have a majority and what wouldn't be broadly supported. But basically, we've covered what Mrs. Fili was presenting to us. So maybe I could just run through the individual aspects. Access, first of all. I think that the feeling is that we shouldn't just focus on heavily indebted people and small target groups. We should cover broader access than that, having a basic bank account for a broader group of people. Basically, for everyone. Everyone should have this right to a basic bank account. Now, should we base things on a country-by-country approach? That's another question. Well, this really remains to be seen. And this is still being discussed. And I think that this issue is largely theoretical. I don't think many citizens would seek to have a basic bank account in every member state. Some people have said that there needs to be a link with the country in which the account is opened. Now, from an internal market point of view, this is rather questionable. I mean, I come from Germany, which is a federal country, and I can open up a bank account in each of the Länder in Germany without having an address in the individual Länder. And we have a similar structure in the EU, a kind of federal structure, if you like. It is comparable. But there is an internal market, so why should you have to have an address in the country in which you're opening a bank account? Some people live near the border, and they might want to open up an account in a neighboring country, and they ask themselves the question, why shouldn't I be able to do that? So there should be this flexibility, this openness, but this is still being discussed. Identity is another issue. I think that we agree that we need to have a low threshold. Protection against money laundering, there we need clearer criteria. The Commission needs to clarify matters there. Obviously, we don't want to promote money laundering. But this shouldn't lead to the overburdening of bank customers. We shouldn't introduce some excessively complex rules in the name of protecting against money laundering. I think that there is a broad majority in favor of that in the EP. On the fees, the charges, a majority of people have said that we don't want to have fees if you're just focusing on people who are in debt. So here we have the idea of having an account for special social groups. So do you want to exempt people from fees? But if you're talking about a bank account which should be available to all citizens, then you won't be able to get around having some kind of cost, because there'll be big demand. I don't know how huge the demand will be for these bank accounts, but there will be bigger demand, and there will be costs generated, which will have to be covered one way or another. But among the rapporteurs, there is the discussion about subsidiarity. Should this be left up to the member states to decide on the issue of a cost? Should there be a ceiling introduced for costs? And the sums involved could vary widely from country to country. So what we're basically saying at the moment is that we do want to have an upper limit, 18 euros, approximately, and this would be revised at regular intervals. It can be adapted, but that should just be the upper ceiling, because otherwise we want to just look at price developments, wage developments. These should be the main criteria for setting costs in the member states. But it's difficult to deal with the different levels of purchasing power. It's difficult to have a uniform level, uniform rates. But I hope that we will be able to resolve this. On overdrafts, Well, there has to be a difference as compared to a standard bank account. But I was in the past responsible for an institution that provides advice to people in debt in Germany. So I headed up a department which was responsible for this kind of thing. So I know that it is often very helpful if you're talking about indebted people or people with a low income. I think it's good not to give them too much room for maneuver when it comes to overdrafts and what have you. Now, I know that this is a German take on things, perhaps, but in Germany, you are constantly being invited to overstretch yourself, to enter into an overdraft. So I think that you have to be strict with people. But at the end of the month, you might want to provide a buffer, and if the end of the month falls on a weekend or a public holiday, then your wages might only arrive a few days later. So you should provide some sort of buffer there, but no more than that, so that people are not drawn into this web, and so that they don't live beyond their means. And the opening speaker mentioned this, the fact that there are problems here. And we had a hearing, and Eastern European representatives said that if you can't get a loan from a normal bank, then you're often exposed to loan sharks that charge a very high rate. So that's another issue. I think there is a need to act, a need to do something, but for a basic bank account, I don't think it would make sense to provide overdraft facilities to any considerable degree. On providing information, yes, we think that's very important. We put this in our report. And things have been watered down somewhat as a result of discussions with the shadow rapporteur on this. On the Liberals' side, there are misgivings about this. But I think that information campaigns do make sense about these bank accounts. But I don't think that we'll get every single point that we put in our report through. But I do hope that you, as representatives of civil society, will bring the appropriate pressure to bear to try to get these points through. Now, on providing incentives, well, the conservative side of the parliament would like to drop this. I don't want to do that. And at the moment, we have a very soft variant. But I think that the soft variant is better than having nothing on this at all, because otherwise we won't have any point of reference at all. And I've heard agreement from some of the other speakers. So maybe you could make a comment on this. Preferably you could make your comments by next Tuesday, because that's the next negotiating round with the shadow rapporteurs. And the shadow rapporteur, one of the shadow rapporteurs comes from your country, and he'd like to regulate purely at the national level on this matter. But I'm not sure whether that will really get us anywhere. So that's the state of play, more or less, with the negotiations at the moment. I hope that we will manage to have these as many of these points approved as possible. But this is not a legislative proposal that we're working on the basis of. These are suggestions. This is an own initiative report that we're drafting, and the Commission could do something completely different. But we are trying to apply political pressure. We want the Commission to propose something quickly. I was talking to Mr. Barnier just this Tuesday. He's very interested in these matters and in what we're doing. He's interested in having legislation, and he's happy that the Econ has taken this initiative, and he is very open-minded on this. I said that I was in favor of a broader access than he was thinking of originally, and I think that he is open-minded on broadening things, and he wants to submit something next year, and we need to figure out what the common ground is and try to make as much progress as possible. So that's my presentation so far. Thank you.
Thank you. It's exciting to see how European democracy operates and achieves compromises on such important matters. Even though the road is a long one, it provides a solid basis to support the action of those who want to promote financial inclusion, particularly networks such as Efin. So